Yeah.
So I want to welcome everybody to our inaugural episode. Within an episode, it's the drafting table. We come up with a name, and this is a moment for us to hang out with people who play Mutants and Masterminds, members of the Mumamo community that hang out with us quite often, give us the business. We have perhaps not thought this cunning plan all the way through. We've invited them into the building. They're with us. They're on the inside. It's been a joy. We're gonna have a lot of fun. We're talking about characters. We're talking about your characters, developing them, the work you put in, and just getting crunchy. We're gonna get real nerdy. I promise you, there are gonna be some things that I do not get, and I will ask for clarifications. But this is really an opportunity for us to say hello to these two fine friends. Hey.
Hi.
Hello.
It is good to see you both.
Yeah, a long-time listener, first time on the stream.
Yeah.
Nice.
I've been on the streams before, but this is I think this is the new for all of us. So
yeah, it's your first appearance on the Mumamo stage.
Right.
Yeah, the Mumamo main stage. But well, it's a delight, and I appreciate that you were two of the first people to have jumped in, and I was really excited about it and wanted to just kind of strike while the iron was hot. Let's do this first. Who are you?
Okay, I'm Dominic Fusil. I'm sort of known also in the community, like around the Freedomverse community and Mutants and Masterminds as Temzik. I've been involved with the system, playing it, running it, what have you, for a bit over 3 years. Although I've known about Mutants and Masterminds for a lot longer.
Okay, nice.
I'm Auranon. You might have seen me around on the Freedomverse server as well. I've been playing for about 2 years, since 2020, actually. I got in, Dominic was the first guy I met on the server, and we made characters together. Well, he had a character, I made mine and added him on. And
that's what I love about this, is that you were a package deal, and I was like, yes, this is perfect. Like, just a great opportunity to talk about, like, how characters come about and the interplay between the two characters and kind of how you've built the history behind all that stuff is, I think, part and parcel of what this is all about. So with that being said, why don't you talk to me about who these characters are? Now, I've got some, let me pop this open. Who's going to go first?
I mean, you've got the longer character history. You start, and then when we get to the point where I jump in, we'll.
Yeah.
So, real quick, just so everyone knows, we're getting into the weeds. We're getting nerdy. We're getting dirty. We're going to talk about math. We're going to, we're going to get into it. And so, if you are afraid of knowledge, then you may want to skip ahead. But if you're a cool kid and you want to learn a thing or two, then hang out. It'll be fun. But Dominic, since you're going first, now your character's name is Hotwire.
Correct, Hotwire.
Gotcha.
And I will note, I just noticed this now. It's weird. It's not like this on my other things. The parry's actually wrong. That parry / should be 10. I think.
Told you we're getting into it, friends. I told you.
So for some reason, Hero Lab is doing something wonky with the way it works. As I was telling you, sort of before we got into the live portion of this, I've been meaning to do a complete rebuild of Hotwire when he gets to 200 power points.
All right, so talk to me now. So that's one of the things I love about the system, is it really allows for that sort of reimagining within that bounds of the character that you created, really within the bounds of whatever you want to do. I mean, that is what's phenomenal about this stuff. Let's talk about the genesis, Hotwire, and how long you've been playing, and give me some of the juicy bits.
Well, Hotwire has actually existed as a character in concept since I was much, much younger. I can't even remember how old I was when I first came up with the concept of Hotwire, but he has changed a lot.
And well before your Mutants and Masterminds
Yes, way
Okay.
before Mutants and Masterminds days. Originally, he was kind of envisioned as more of like a technopath, and he still can kind of do that. But his was more taking things in his environment and making high-tech gadgets out of them on the fly and technokinesis, moving technology around. But that changed when I started playing Mutants and Masterminds and really getting into it. And he became more of a he could turn his body parts into various high-tech gadgets and various weapons. Like again, I don't know if you're at all familiar with this. If you've ever seen Generator Rex, it's a very similar sort of power set to how that works. And the thing that's really interesting about Mutants and Masterminds, the thing that I love when I make this character, is all the different ways you can make this kind of a power set. The original Hotwire build utilized variable, because the original way he was built and the original way he was meant to function, and I still kind of try to emulate that a bit with the current build, is that he is a character who has high versatility, more versatility than probably the average Mutants and Masterminds character. But in exchange for that high level of versatility, he sacrifices his action economy.
Okay.
Like, because he has to take a move action every time he wants to switch between a mode.
Well, now I have a question for both of you, but before I do that, Oranon, I want to be introduced to Tachyon.
Oh, hey. Tachyon is my speedster. There aren't very many speedsters on Freedomverse, I will say. I'm probably one of the longer running ones. So he is a time-bending, space warping, reality breaking doofus, let's say.
Okay.
You notice he's got 0 intelligence, and I flaunt that.
I was gonna say that
Yeah,
strikes me as low.
yeah, he's infused with tachyonic energy, which gives him like super speed, reality bending powers. And I lore made them. He got them while he snuck into his university professor's office to try to change his exam grades.
I
He
see.
failed. He accidentally activated a particle accelerator, and that exploded behind him.
Okay. All right. I like that. Now, real quick, Dominic, talk to me about how did Hotwire get
Where his powers
powered
come
up?
from?
Yeah.
Well, he actually doesn't know the exact origin of them yet.
Okay.
The meta explanation that I, as the omniscient creator of Hotwire, know is that the nanobots that he was infused with were sent from the distant future, from a distant timeline. I think I said like the 32nd century,
Okay.
where the smartest man of the 32nd century built these nanobots to combat a terrible timeline conquering AI named Omnivac. And he built these nanobots. He was too late to finish them, so he decided, I'm going to send them back in time to a younger version of myself so that I can combat this evil timeline conquering AI. But something went wrong, and the nanobots got shot back to the 21st century, and
As they do.
they sought out a semi-close genetic match for their creator, and they latched on to 16 at the time 16-year-old Wesley.
Well, what a fun thing for a 16-year-old.
And he doesn't quite know where the powers came from, but I will say it has actually been happening occasionally where a couple of robots from this Omnivac AI have been traveling the timelines trying to find these nanobots, and he's encountered a couple of them, and so he knows now that there are these robots that are after him, but he doesn't quite know why.
Right. Now, I'm something that Ornan, when you said that you are one of the few speedsters, the Freedomverse is the our beloved Apook runs the is founder and creator of that space, and it is really like a pretty ornate timeline or a space, and it is a world that everyone has built there, and it's a very active Discord server. A lot of things going on, a lot of games being run. Now, you said that you were one of the few speedsters. Do you know why?
Yeah. I think the fact that just like speedsters itself is a very narrow archetype. You need to have like a lot of people like you need to add something to spice it up because it's the same way as just making I punch real good character. I move real fast, but what else?
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And
so
a lot of people think like I don't want to just move fast, and they then they go to other archetypes, right?
Gotcha.
So I yes, my character moves fast, but Tachyon is more a tiny manipulator than a straight speedster.
Well, I was going to ask. Yeah, did you pick sort of the time manipulator aspect of that because, like, did you feel like the speedster was a constraint, or did you already kind of know like what you wanted to build and it was fun and different and not your typical kind of thing?
I felt that like speedster was a baseline.
Yeah.
But actually, his time morphing powers. If you guys here looking for the deep lore, he's actually the glitches that he does, his time glitches, because Tachyons move faster than light and thus back in time, so he stutters. He's got latency. It's actually based on Splatoon 1 netcode because I played Splatoon 1 on really bad Wi-Fi back in 2016, and I'm like, man. Yeah,
I like how you're keeping the thread of the trauma of bad of latency and sort of mixing it in with as a kind of a character flaw or a
So like I actually have like an audio filter and everything that I use. I don't know if I can explain this computer, but basically I jam my audio every now and then so his voice stutters into incomprehensibility.
That is brilliant. I'm playing a robot in a Mutants and Masterminds that we're that's part of the team game, and it is I keep thinking maybe I'll do like a robot voice or something. I really want to, but I'm playing around with that notion. But I think that is great for both of you when it comes to the role play stuff. How far do you get into that? Like, is that a thing that do you really get into it?
Yeah, we really get into it, and like it's actually to the point where it's come up a couple times in other MMOs. The idea of people who having people who you're so comfortable playing with that you even let them play your supporting NPCs.
Yeah, yes, I love that idea. I absolutely love it.
So I play as love interest every now and then. We need someone to voice the love interest. I'm like, okay, no one's gonna voice it. All right, and I jumped in.
I love it. Well, and so then you're so comfortable you can kind of extemporaneously step in and do that thing.
Yeah. Talking to characters at once is really hard, I will say. Especially because I can't get them to talk with each other. Otherwise, it's just me sitting in a room yelling at myself. But like Fire Emblem Warrior is called. It's Matt Mercer in a room.
Yelling at himself.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of juggling on my part to keep everything moving, but like it's been really fun.
Well, I think that's
and it gives
great.
him a little bit of personability.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I think about the fact that you're running a duo. Talk to me about that whole that piece of it.
So the duo that they're in is actually grown a bit now because they're now actually part of a whole team. They became a part of a team of 4 called the Rising Stars, alongside an alien sort of invincible type XP and named Stellar and Andreas, Andreas, who is an Atlantean with like size changing powers and magic.
So we've got like a Teen Titans kind of dynamic going on.
I was gonna say it feels very Teen Titans-y.
Teen Titans is my favorite show, so
one of my favorites too.
They even have a tower base that's a water tower out in the woods.
I love it.
Like a big old
water tower. Here's a question that I have for you two. Talk to me about your complications.
Mm-hmm.
Should I go first this time?
Yeah, you go first because I think you have
Tachyon's temporal glitches. Sorry, I cut you off there. Tachyon's temporal glitches are his main complication. They don't actually get added that often because they are a carte blanche. The idea is that a lot of Tachyon's stronger powers, I've self-nerfed them because I like building interesting characters more than the good ones. So a lot of his stronger moves, his phase, some of his bigger attacks. If he fails to hit, like if they fail to connect, if he turns them off, they rebound and he glitches, which leads to all sorts of crazy effects. I've had him teleport. I've had him get thrown back in time 100 years and then show up next round, somewhat traumatized.
Interesting.
One time, someone teleported him in between a hero and a villain, so he got punched in the face.
The time that he accidentally, like, Looney Tunes Wile E. Coyote slammed his way through an entire train, like left the
oh man, I forgot that one. He just punched like 7 holes through that train.
And then got run over by the train.
Yeah, I love this stuff. And talk to me about Hotwire. What is the complication? Or do you have more to add, Tachyon? I'm sorry.
Yeah, so like his glitches, they attach to certain moves. It's also attached to his pacemaker because he's got tachycardia. But
nice.
And if that's disabled, his glitches get stronger in frequency and intensity.
Which Hotwire's actually been working on. He's been working on helping him get something to help with that. He has built him a time bicycle.
Okay.
Sort of in the vein of like the cosmic treadmill.
Sure.
But he doesn't randomly throw himself back in time.
Yeah, so
he control jumps.
He can time travel more reliably. And it's kind of like it's like a fusion of like the cosmic treadmill and like the Back to the Future DeLorean, but a bicycle.
Yeah, I feel that. I love that.
For speedsters, yeah.
That is phenomenal. But I definitely want to hear Hotwire. Like, I'm curious as to what. So yeah, you explain what your complication is, and then we'll kind of get into that for a sec. But yeah, go on.
So Hotwire, the big overarching, like, big bad complication that hasn't been used a ton, but it's very much one of those, when it hits, it's gonna hit. Omnivac. Like, that's his big distant big bad cosmic level threat that's looming.
Now, for those of us that don't know what an Omnibag is.
Omnivac.
Omnivac. An Omnibag. It's like a fanny pack only.
Yeah. Omnivac. Like, it's sort of a take on like the Univac, like old style computer.
Omnivac.
Omnivac is like this distant, far in the future AI, like think Skynet meets Brainiac meets Kang the Conqueror.
Oh, I feel that. Yeah, like, we're making that today.
That like wants to conquer all the timelines, and he's got this nifty like those plasma balls that you touch, like the
glass ball with the little tendrils of electricity. Yeah.
It's that aesthetic. Like all of his robot drones have like this like plasma ball aesthetic going on, and it's
very satisfying to smash.
Yeah, but yeah, it's the orb. Pondering the orb. But that's like the big complication that I haven't gotten to explore a lot of. The complication that we're having a lot of fun with is the love interest complication, because we are doing sort of the classic, like, oh, he likes her, she thinks he's he's an okay friend. She gets his name wrong constantly, and that's a running joke. But she's absolutely in love with the heroic identity, and they're both really bad at it, and we're hashing that out, and we have some fun plans for where that might go and how that might resolve someday down the line. And the other one that we're just starting to experiment a little with is, I mentioned this earlier, Mitch Masters, which is, he's got this sort of J. Jonah Jameson-esque, like journalist hater, like
Yeah. So he's obsessed and he's ready to just tear apart, take
yeah.
down. Yeah.
I mean, he's got like a it's like a late night talk show host type deal.
Okay.
So he's got like this Stephen Colbert-esque like late night comedy talk show where he just trash talks Hotwire.
I love that. Okay, so this is what I love about Complications. And I think that, given, I have worked with a lot of, I will say, a rainbow of nerds, of which I am belong. But when mutants and masterminds, people who are really into and have really, like I've yet to meet actually somebody who if I'm talking to them about mutants and masterminds, they are in deep. And the thought that they put into the Complications and the way that they really it's sort of like one of those things where it's kind of the honor system as to how conflicted you get with with the Complications. But I find that by and large, I would say 99.9999% of the people who play tabletop playing games in general, honorable people. These are people that when they could find some material online and not have to support the people who make it, they don't, they actually support people who make it. And it's sort of reflective in the Complications discussion. I love that. I love that, by the way, both of you were on during Mumamo went and picked up the remainder of those, which I think is just a great
Yeah.
story.
Yeah.
But I love that, and I think that Complications, you can tell a lot by about a person by how they utilize their Complications. You know what I mean? Like how thoughtful they get into it, and and really creating a true sort of space to be vulnerable as a character, in this space. I think that's really, there's something very endearing about it, and I love to hear that. So thank you for sharing. Now let's get into the weeds. Let's talk about like building characters. And one of the things that I have a challenge with is that there is, um, and I'm in the biz. It's like taking a fire hose and just cramming it right in my fire hose hole, which, yeah. And it's a lot. And, oftentimes I'm like, someone will say, oh, yeah, you should do this, or it's an array, or it's a this, or it's a that. I'm just like, I have no earthly clue what you're talking about. Well, they're like, well, okay, read this book. And then that book leads me to this book. And I've got the
Yeah.
Mutants and Masterminds collection here, and so I literally will find myself that sort of analysis paralysis. So
Yeah.
talk to me about how you started, and then, the evolution over time of your characters into who
Right.
they are today, mathematically or
Yeah.
skill wise and all that.
Because that's something that like honestly that right there, Troy, like that's what I wanted to go into coming into this because
Nice.
so much of what makes Hotwire who he is now is the evolution of how his character has grown mechanically. Because originally he was just a power level 8 character that I played on Freedomverse, and then I took a break from Freedomverse for a while, and then when I came back, I said, you know what, I think I'd like to rebuild Hotwire as a power level 10. I'd played in enough games with him before that I think I'm fine just resubmitting him as a straight 150 PowerPoint power level 10 character.
When you say resubmit, there's a process within the Freedomverse of
Yeah.
registering
Yeah,
your
vetting.
We've got house rules.
yeah.
It's
That's right.
part of playing in a big community is that you got to be able to walk in and have a sheet that's balanced. If you have it's respect for the other people at the table and also for your GMs.
Yeah, managing expectations, being sure everyone's
Yeah.
on the same, playing from the same book, and also there. I know that when you get some younger people or enthusiastic people, they're just like, I do everything and all the things, and so
Yeah,
and there's a lot of
which
math here.
which is funny because the original build for Hotwire that I had to change because of this was Hotwire originally had variable. And variable is a power that is very easy to break and very easy to slow down the game if you don't know what you're doing with it. Fortunately, I
Yeah.
was someone who knew how to use it responsibly, but I understood why I had to change it and why I had to make it what it is now, where it's an array that does some wonky stuff with activation, where I'm constantly having to reactivate my powers. in order to switch between things, and it keeps that flavor that I had that I liked, which was um, having to having great versatility at the cost of action economy.
Yeah, yeah, and what I
And
love about that is that it is it's all about balance and making sure that you are creating a circumstance where everyone's enjoying playing and that it's not just sort of like, these sort of already you're a hero doing amazing things. Like,
yeah, and
there's a difference
what
between a
Hot
hero and a god.
Yeah, and what Hotwire's actual specialty really is, outside of filling the tech niche when like the technology skill niche is needed, um Hotwire mechanically is very much about being a monkey wrench hero that can fill whatever party role is missing
Okay.
just by switching to that mode.
It's kind of the Swiss Army knife of,
Swiss Army knife
yeah.
character. Like the mode that he's in right now on the sheet, the setting that I had left him on, that's a little funky because I think Hero Lab borked the math a little,
Yeah.
but it's right on the actual Roll20 sheets I've got for him. Is a shield mode that dumps his active defenses, but gives him like a bunch of defensive abilities.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just kind of scanning the sheet here. Is it this Shield of Science?
Shield of Science,
There
yes.
we go.
Yeah.
Look at
The
this
one
character art. That character
Yeah.
art's something else. Where did that come from?
Yep, it's mine. I do the art for Hotwire now.
And then you, in addition, I mean, like so you did the art for both of these characters, and we know by conversation in chat and all of that that you're an artist, and so I love that. I love it, and the art is just it's really fun. It is really great. It is evocative. And I feel like it just kind of captures the Mutants and Masterminds spirit, the vibe of it all. Um, I dig it for sure.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, go on. I'm attacking. I'm sorry. Hotwire. There we go. So one of the things that I wanted to know about, like where you started with this, because you as people who enjoy the superhero genre, many of us started at a very young age in comic books and sort of seeing ourselves and being a sort of uh, taken to that fantasy space, when we were young and just loving it. So you had this character you kind of carried with you. You bring it to Freedomverse or you bring it to Mutants and Masterminds, and then you found Freedomverse, or like how did you get into that
Okay.
circle?
So I was kind of vaguely into the idea of tabletop RPGs in high school, but I never really got into it. But one thing I found out about was Mutants and Masterminds. I picked up the rule book for Mutants and Masterminds when I was maybe like a junior in high school, and I just had a lot of trouble learning the system. There was a lot I didn't understand about it. I tried running it for friends a couple of times, and it never clicked. So I sat that book down, put it on my shelf for years
Yeah.
until I decided, maybe because I started getting back into tabletop RPGs again because of, I think, the Star Trek Adventures RPGs, what got me back into the hobby. And I said, I'll also pick up my Mutants and Masterminds book. I wonder if there are any good Mutants and Masterminds communities out there. And I got involved with Freedomverse then, maybe like 3-ish years ago. It was right at the time that Freedomverse was like starting to become big.
Yeah.
Like I don't know if Ophook was even like official Green Ronin at that point yet.
Yeah, I mean that didn't actually happen. I mean, he started to contribute to the VTT team and getting engaged in that way, and of course, creating an encounter and all of that. But that happened very recently.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
So
which is what I love. Ornan, I wanted to ask you that same question. Like, sort of the genesis of your character. Like, you know, did you create Tachyon in the community and sort of in that space and sort of utilizing the resources and all of the folks around, or you've been carrying Tachyon around with you like Dominic? Like what's the story there?
I wouldn't say that I have a previous version of Tachyon before Freedomverse, but I've got like a bunch of characters that have a lot of similar traits in the fact that I kind of classify my characters like alphanumerically, and the first guy I had was for D&D bard. And they both kind of like they had similar attitudes I've kind of carried through with a similar string of characters that have like vaguely similar personalities. So like Tachyon's like maybe character 3 or 4 in this line, so to speak, of ancestry.
I love that. I love that. So there's sort of the spiritual connection between these characters.
I jumped from D&D to Pathfinder to Starfinder. I try to make a character in Starfinder, and because class-based systems, you can't make everything. And I'm like, man, like I want to make this character. I've worked on it for 2 months, and I can't get it to work. And maybe I should pick up a new system. And so somewhere on ye old internets, I found like a bunch of people talking about it, and someone had a PDF there, and I cracked it open, took one look, and said, "Oh man, this is some good stuff."
Yeah.
So we were a couple months into the pandemic at this point. I found the subreddit. I found the link to the Freedomverse through the subreddit. I stumbled across Temir by accident, and the rest is history.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
And the reason I mention that is that there, just real quick, the reason I mentioned sort of how I think it's important that we talk about sort of your onboarding or how you kind of connected, because I think that there are people out there who want to figure it out. I mean, the story that you tell about like kind of getting the book or getting, like that is a tale often told, and sometimes the context of a group community and the questioning and all that's what I love so much about the Mutants and Masterminds community is it is deep into advice and sort of conversation and by and large very friendly, very but oftentimes very like that's not you don't want to do that. Like you want to do it this way, you want to do it that way. And I love that because it's like watching a bunch of artisans sort of create these bespoke heroes. It's really entertaining in a good way. But yeah, so with that being said, I want to get into, is there anything more you wanted to share, Dominic, about Hotwire's sort of the math?
Oh, the math of him?
Just generally speaking, like, in the development of
him? Yeah. Just the sort of interesting thing is where it shifts points around, and I think I might be simplifying some of that soon, but the interesting one is the one that drops the active defenses, the dodge, the parry, in favor of toughness with impervious on it, like with really high impervious on it. It gives me what's it? Interpose. It gives me all like the little defensive advantages. But then there's also stuff like
all right, that's I've got it so small on the screen.
Then there's the interesting one that always sticks to me is that I have the grappler mode that shoots grappling hooks around and such.
That's my favorite.
Man, the thing I'll always say is, man, I hope one day you guys get around to officially instituting what's the power? Tether? Because I read over the pre-build for Tether and I just read it over and I said, man, this is just everything that the grapple power does, but like I don't have to like make every individual little effect of it as like if you go to where the grappling mode is, it's like this wall of like 4 power. It's this wall of like 4 powers. Like it all works and it all does what I need it to do. But I'm like, I was reading over Snare and I was like, this is just my grappler mode. But like one power.
Did you get where did you pick that up? Did you the
Patreon?
Yeah. So, and what Dominic's talking about, of course, is our Mutants Masterminds Patreon, which is patreon.com/mutants masterminds, and we are releasing sort of alternative power sets or little play tests kinds of things, and that is one of the things that is there. We do in the community have sort of a group of, I will say, back to basics, like it's the book, and that's kind of where you kind of hang out, and fair enough because that is sort of the shared language. But then we have folks. Really, the Mutants and Masterminds is meant to allow people to do in collaboration whatever the hell you want.
But
the
spirit of superheroes.
Yeah, exactly, and exactly, and so I'm curious. Auranon, as it relates to Tachyon, and Ornan, I believe you're like me when it comes to sort of like, I want to math. I do. I would love to math, but I'm happy when there are things like Hero Lab that kind of math for
Yeah.
me. But it does free up some cycles for you to kind of get into the powers and how to utilize them. How much of the um, when you're designing Tachyon, and even as you continue to evolve the hero, what are the things that you're thinking about? Like, when you're talking about the kind of powers, like, so you go in and you're like, hey, I really want to be able to um, to make something out of the complications, that something happens and my power, something changes with my power set or something. Um, how much work do you put into that, and then how does that conflict with the math? Like, is that an easy thing to do? Is it, like, talk to me
I have
about
a
that?
bunch of moves. I've got a bunch of moves that just never made the sheet because like I can't math it, or it doesn't math in a way that works often. Like I'll add a move
Yeah.
to a sheet, I'll play 2 games, and I'll be like, okay, can I live with this? Can I live with this? Is this working? Is this doing what I want it to do? Uh, a lot of attacks actually, I like this stuff. I get it. I either pick it up in game or I pick it up from the research I do because I do a lot of research for my characters, as Tammy here will admit to. Yeah. Um, uh, yeah, that's
A
the
knowing
knowing
nod. I like that.
is like so I generally think okay, but wouldn't it be cool if this, and I'm like, okay, but what's the twist?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's often tends to be my mentality with things, is like, okay, and then, or and but, or
Yeah, and then do you find when you're designing sort of the power sets and you're kind of thinking about all these pieces, 'cause clearly the both of you have really, you're looking at kind of cross discipline, like these pieces fit, they're not sort of discordant, they're not like, you are really trying to build an ecosystem of a hero, and make that it's balanced and that there's pieces there that are both sort of something that will dampen, the complication side of it, but also there's some pretty potent powers here. Like they're fun things to kind of
yeah.
Yeah.
get into. So, um, what do you see as you evolve? I mean, are you looking at an end game? Are you looking at like how much of what you look at to as far as your character's development is kind of mapped in your head and then or inspired by the actual events of an encounter?
That gets complete. I've hit 200 PowerPoints, and I'm kind of at this point where everything I want him to do, he can do. So
Nice.
he's like
Okay.
he debuted at speed 7 as his max speed. Everyone's like, oh man, speedsters, I'm not gonna go fast. I don't have those kind of points. Speed Taken debuted at speed 7. Like that
Yeah.
was his max safe speed before he hit the realm of, if I go 3 rounds like this, I'm gonna be unconscious.
Right. Right.
But like I build up his speed over time. I've given him a lot more utility, so he can now just do more than just punch things. He's got a couple skills. He's not great at them. I
Yeah.
mostly keep them as a joke. His tech was 1 tech. You can see that in the corner. But
Yeah.
he has like luck. He has a bit of time manipulation via luck. He's got better teleports. He has like a bunch of nifty tools in his toolbox I can pull out whenever there's an edge case scenario. Like the thing I like about Mutants and Masterminds and Freedom versus Play is that your characters don't grow powerful. Like you don't gain levels like it's D&D. You gain uh variability. You gain the niche stuff,
Yeah,
the utility, and
it's not vertical. You don't.
horizontal.
Yeah, it's very horizontal growth with the character, and I like
Like
that.
I do
And
it's
love
not
I
going to
think
go
that.
faster.
I do
He
love
can
that
certainly go
Tachyon is
faster.
immune to mental temporal changes. That kind of cracks
Yeah.
me up. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. Oh yeah. Well,
Yeah.
a lot of that dates back to so I remember something you would ask was like, oh, we'll have these two characters sort of get to know each other.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah. Yeah.
they'd had a couple of interactions like in a couple of adventures, but the thing that really brought them together and really like made them really good friends was a big event on Freedomverse called West of Freedom, in which the entirety of Freedom City got transformed into like a Wild West version of
Mhm.
West of Freedom. And even though it was kind of unintentional, Tachyon kind of became like the central character of that
Of the two,
arc.
there
Like,
were like
yeah,
4 central characters, and I was one of them.
How
yeah, there were like
fun.
yeah, and I kind of became Hotwire. Kind of was a side-ish character, although he did end up being there for the finale. And in the finale, Hotwire and Tachyon discovered each other's identities, and we're like, oh well, that explains a lot. Because they happen to also know each other at HIT at the college in Freedom City.
I love
So
this. I love that one of the things that we do well in the tabletop role-playing community is it is fun to be in the spotlight and to be sort of that main character, and that there's enough time and space, and everyone gets a piece of pie. Like the more people that want pie, we just get more pie. Like that's just all the pie you need. And I love that.
Honestly, West of Freedom was my favorite. Like I'm still waiting for something to top it.
Yeah, that was like hands down one of the best like story arcs that we have told with these characters.
The whole server pitched in.
And that's one of the things I love about that is it is over, everywhere, you've got these communities of Mutants and Masterminds players, and they are working together to create these spaces and really doing it. It reminds me of the, when you were a kid, you're playing on the playground, and there are all kinds of things going on, and it's sort of this when you get there's those days where it was just like everybody was having fun, and there were all the things were happening, and you could just pick from a million fun things, and that's kind of what it reminds me of. I mean, it's a very respectful community, and it's
the funniest thing about that whole thing though was with the West of Freedom was the person there was one guy who was sort of spearheading it, and it was like very much his brainchild, and he had put forth at the beginning is like, hey, if you want, your character can either like retain their regular universe like form and personality and persona, and they're just reacting to this new weird world they find themselves in, or you could play as like a Wild West version of your character that has no memories of the original timeline and it's just Wild Wested out the nines. And you get an extra hero point at the start of the session for being like westernized.
Sure.
And I swear to God, I think everybody went with that second option of making a Wild West version of their character because it was more fun.
Sure, yeah, and then a fun way to reimagine, sort of this thing, So, Dominic, Auranon talked about, this character that they built is well rounded and is who is realized. But I feel like your character has some arc to go.
Yes, he definitely does, and that's by design. It's very much for him. He's very much got that like Spider-Man kind of hero coming into his own and developing kind of thing going on. And there's going to be a lot of talk about how his powers are going to develop and grow because there's going to be a lot of talk about where his powers come from and other nanotechnologies that are impacting him and his powers. Like he had a whole thing when the Rising Stars came together, like the super team that he's on, where they fought Megastar, one of the sort of semi-villains of the Earth Prime setting, and their nanobots got all screwy with each other. And we figure, well, that's going to have some ramifications somewhere down the line. Like,
it's barring some future joy. Yeah.
We figure like, oh, maybe there's an echo of Megastar now lurking somewhere in Hotwire's mind that's going to maybe prod him to do some not quite healthy things because that's how Megastar is.
I love this, and it does have some of that Spider-Man coming of age sort of feel. It has a little bit of Harry Potter kind of feel.
The symbiote. I was very much saying like, oh, I want to dig into like the symbiote arc for that. That kind of thing where it's like the voice in the back of his head telling him to give in to those toxic impulses.
I love this, and now here's the thing. Since this is the first segment, I think that we might end up like folks may be listening to this part of the segment as part 2. Because we've got. I feel like there's a million more things to talk about, but as we start to kind of wind down, part of the reason why it was important to me to do this kind of thing is to kind of showcase some of the excitement and the fun and the joy of kind of creating these characters, and also for me to kind of get in some opportunity to talk to folks, because I know I see it all the time. There are people who spend an inordinate, not even inordinate, they spend all the time, which is right for them, on creating characters. And
Yep.
when there can't be a game, there can be a character being created.
Yeah.
Do you have other characters? Are there other,
Oh yes.
yeah.
I have two others.
I was gonna say, Auranon, are you looking at a now that you kind of reached peak prototype here, like you're like, this is as close to the finished kind of character. What are you gonna do next?
I the thing about Freedom Burst is that you get like 1 point per game, right? So the thing is, people start doing is when they hit this point that I am, where like the Ironside point, the Magicka point, where you just have too many points to deal with, you save them, and then sometimes something will come along, and you'll want it, and you'll be like, man, I can just buy this outright, right there.
Yeah, you got it. Done.
Nice,
Yeah.
nice.
Like
Yeah,
I'm not gonna keep stacking stats or skills or anything. I feel like it's the restraint of it. I don't need speed 22.
Yeah.
Zakian's fine where he is, and I enjoy him having hard limits of like his complications kicking in, because that just makes it more interesting for me. Like I said, I build interesting characters, not good ones.
And I love that, because sometimes those complications are the good thing about, like,
Right.
or that limitation. I'll call it discipline. Like, this is a literal, like, candy store. You can do all kinds of things, but the fun is in the struggle. The fun is in the friction. The fun is
Yeah.
all of that.
What I always tell people with this system is that, by God, you could build something obscenely powerful in Mutants and Masterminds. It's not even hard.
Fully back.
It is so easy to build something that's incredibly broken. And in fact, I think there are a few places in the books where it says that, like, yeah, we know that it's easy to build something really overpowered and really broken, but that's by design, because that's what comes with the freedom to build how you want in this game.
And
Just
sometimes you want to build the giant monster, or the thing that is so
Yeah.
powerful, and have that kind of a game. I mean, there's space
Right.
for that, for sure. Yeah.
And just,
I
make sure that everyone's having a good time, and make sure that
There it is. Yeah.
make sure that it's fair, and just don't be a jerk.
Yeah.
Because the way I always see it is, if you decide that you want to be that guy and build that character that's really broken, and it's going to ruin everyone's fun because you built a broken character. Well, guess what? The game master also has those tools to, like, do you want to start that arms race?
Yeah,
Because
absolutely. Well, and that's the other thing too, because you do need to communicate, and
Right.
like, you need to introduce your character to the other people around the table and kind of sort out how they all know each other. But the other thing too is, I think that the advice I would give people who are just, like, really intent on building that OP,
Yeah.
the question to ask yourself is, how many encounters and opportunities to play are you missing? Because
Yes.
it doesn't work, and the other thing as well is, those complications, or playing in that space, really does allow for people that aren't you to have the microphone for a minute. And that doesn't mean you play less. It doesn't mean you are less important to what goes on. It means that through sort of those moments of, I'm using air quotes, but I don't have hands.
The Disembodied Troy.
Weakness. Yeah, it is. That's one of the. I love that the most. I think it is. I think it is a cornerstone of what Mutants and Masterminds is all about. Is a real sort of a very in-depth study of what it means to be different, and to be a hero, and to live in those moments of uncertainty, but in a safe space where you collaborate with other people, fill in the gaps, and I think there's a life lesson in there somewhere, and I bet we will uncover more of that as we continue to talk to folks. So here's the deal: I want to know if someone is watching this, and they are just absolutely wrapped up. They're so excited about it, and then they get the book and they're like, "Oh wow, this is a lot of stuff to kind of figure out." Give me the map, the both of you. Give me a map for somebody who's brand new.
Come up with
First
your
off-
concept first.
Come up with your what now?
Concept.
Concept. Okay. And Aura.
Yeah, freedom. Like if you have a friend who's already in the system, like I suggest you do that. Like Freedomverse also has like a building program. If you hit the math and you're like me and you're like, oh gosh, I do not know what I'm doing. I have a concept. Cool. Like great. How do I make it?
Yeah.
Yeah, the community is really open. I'm really glad about that. Is that we really cleaned up all the toxicity and stuff like that. We're really open now. Like
Real
we
commitment.
already was.
Yeah, it's a
But
real
like
commitment to everyone getting a chance to kind of get in there and
we were all
learn.
newbies
Yeah.
at some point, right?
Yeah.
Like we're all newbies at some point. It's a point of matter of reaching out and helping people in defense
Well,
of the new.
and that's right within sort of the general philosophical sort of thing that is presented by Mutants and Masterminds, and that is we all come with complications, and that's okay. And just have fun, collaborate, and you can nerd out on this stuff as much. Just you got to do it in that way that is accessible for people that aren't you. So this has been an absolute delight. And as sort of the debut of this little feature that is now its own show. But we'll probably break this into a couple pieces. But you both helped me kind of figure the name out. We're doing this on a Saturday. I just want to say thank you so much. Both of you have been just a great contributors to the community. A lot of fun to be around. Just smartassy and contributing and really. I'm grateful, and I'm really glad that you've agreed to kind of take some time to walk us through. I wish we had more time because I have many, many more questions. But in the future, if we wanted to do a part 16 of this dialogue, would you come back and hang out? And
Heck yes.
Oh,
Yeah,
I'd love
absolutely.
to. This was great.
I'd love to talk about character design, like from a visual standpoint, even if I'm kind of crazy.
Now that I'd love, that I would especially love from kind of the vantage point of an artist, somebody who's kind of working in the biz. But I mean, like your art all day, all night, and so I would really love to be able to sort of unpack that as well. And what we might do in the future, as we kind of get more of this process in place, is have a panel discussion and have people kind of talk about their, and really get into it. Talk about some character design, talk about, maybe even in some hot button issues that there might be that people discuss, both in the context of mutants and masterminds outside of the Freedomverse and then what's going on inside the Freedomverse. Because I have had I am unashamed to just shunt new people into that community because it's such a great place. There are
Yeah.
also other communities out there that are doing wonderful things as well. And we're connecting with those folks. But yeah, and of course, people want to hang out with us on Mondays, because we do the Moo
Yeah.
Mammo, and that's a lot of fun. It's pure, ridiculousness, and probably most of that is my fault. But I shall not apologize, especially for the onslaught of Gravy Squatch. That is, I've got a big campaign. I'm starting
Oh,
off.
hell.
It's going to get serious. But
Crazy be his name.
right, exactly. He is here to fill your shoes with gravy as you sleep, which is that's part of the holiday. Again, you two, thank you so much for spending time.
I had a great time.
Yeah, and we'll have you back for sure. I love this sort of crossing the streams and having these conversations like this. So we'll do many, many more of these, folks. If you're watching this and you're like, I want to share my Mutants and Masterminds character, or I want to talk about my philosophy on you name it, specific to Mutants and Masterminds. We really don't need to get into any of that other stuff. But send a note to let's play at greenronin.com. That's what you two did. And we will schedule on behalf as your legal representative, and it's as easy as that. We'll sit down and we'll have a talk, we'll figure out sort of the angle, and we'll nerd out for a bit, and then keep building. This whole notion of the drafting table is really clicking with me, and I thank you for that brilliant contribution, and for hanging out. We will be chatting again. We'll probably release this second part. I will probably do it between the Mondays. I'm almost tempted. I don't want to commit to it, but I'm almost tempted to release this as a whole piece separate and then do sort of part 1 and part 2 on Mumamo, because I think, this might need to be a whole
Thing.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind if it's just a separate series. Like, I understand, especially since
Yeah.
Mumamo, we tend to be jam-packed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And then we
That's a
can't
lot.
Yeah,
really,
Crafting Table Tuesdays.
we don't want to, yeah, exactly. And we also don't want to take away from any of the shenanigan. The Monday shenanigan is very
Right.
important, and it needs its space to breathe. All right, friends, that is it for this very first episode of the Drafting Table. I'm looking forward to seeing where this is going, and I'm looking forward to seeing where your characters are going. We will connect soon. Now back to Troy.